It's great to see you, especially that it was not easy to record this video. My laptop died just after 1 day of vacation in Sweden. So here I am. I'm talking to you from a hotel in Warsaw, and now I'm recording it on my repaired MacBook. So let's hope everything will be all right. My name is Filip Rakowski. I am a CTO and co-founder of Vue Storefront. And you may ask, what is Vue Storefront? Perfect question. Vue Storefront is a perfect open source frontend for your headless e-commerce shop. And now you could probably ask question, what is a perfect frontend? And I'm glad you asked, because this is exactly what my talk is going to be about. So there's a lot of topics to discuss, but before we discuss them, let's align on one thing. What exactly is a headless frontend? In simple words, headless means decoupled. So in monolithic applications, everything is coupled together. Front-end, back-end, data, visual layer, CMS, e-commerce, everything is, together in a monolith, because this is what monoliths are, right? And in headless commerce, you just detach this whole monolith part from the front-end. And the front-end and the back-end talk to themselves through an API. And just to make one thing clear, detaching your e-commerce from its front-end, or detaching the front-end from your e-commerce platform, it already makes your shop headless. In fact, this is a great first step in your headless commerce journey and migration from a monolith. Over time, you will probably integrate with some other vendors, focusing on smaller features like content management or checkout. Headless frontend is usually built using modern web technologies like Vue.js, Angular, React, maybe Svelte, maybe Solid.js, or maybe something that we don't know about yet. But what is common is that all of them are shipped as so-called single-page applications. What are single-page applications? First, let's talk about multi-page applications, something we know very well. When you navigate to a page, we download an HTML document. We navigate to another page, and we download another HTML document. In single-page applications, we download the HTML document only once. And then if we navigate to another route, or if we need to reload some part of the interface, this is actually exactly what is happening. So we are only reloading part of the interface asynchronously. This is delivering much better experience, and what is most important, delivers much better performance. So fasten your seatbelts, because it will be a very juicy 15 minutes. We'll learn about everything that is needed to build the perfect frontend. And we'll focus on 4 challenges that, if tackled right, will definitely allow you to build a great front-end experiences. Those challenges are design, speed, SEO, and handling content that we put on our frontend. So let's start with the design. All the modern frontends are mobile first, using responsive web design. It means that we have a single website that adapts to the screen sizes instead of shipping separate storefronts for different devices like mobile phones, laptops, tablets. The old way of doing things is called adaptive web design, where we would have a totally separate application for each of those. And those interfaces, they aren't built just with a plain old HTML. To make them more organized and easier to work with, and also scalable, developers and designers are using design systems and component libraries. Design system is a combination of a style guide describing different characteristics of your design, like typography, colors, etc., and components that apply those rules. This way, we can be sure that all components follow the same rules. Developers, they're adapting the design system in one of the front-end frameworks by creating a library of reusable components that then are used throughout the whole project. This way, we can keep our interface unified, following the same rules, scalable, and easy to work with. Here, you can see an example of a design system in Figma. We see a clear guidelines on typography, on colors, and we also see a definition of one of the components with all its variations and state. Those components are then used to create sections and full pages. And sometimes people also group those components into subgroups based on their granularity. One of those methodologies is called atomic design by Brad Frost, and we see its application on this slide. Also, if you liked what you heard, you should definitely check out our open source UI library called Storefront UI. It's also applying the atomic design principles. It has Figma designs, it has Vue.js components, and it's completely free. You can find it on our GitHub repository. A perfect frontend not only have to look great, but it also has to just be fast. And users are expecting that the experience will be smooth as possible, and we have no other choice than lifting up to those expectations. And there are essentially three aspects that sum up to overall performance of your website. It's server-side code execution that results in HTML document. It's time this document has to travel through network. And finally, client-side execution, which is usually also the biggest performance bottleneck. To be more precise, JavaScript is the main performance bottleneck. Sometimes also images, so optimize your images, but usually JavaScript. You should make sure that your users are receiving your page as soon as possible. So we should optimize for so-called first load. To make that happen, we should use something called server-side rendering. So how does it work? Basically, you are creating a full HTML of your website on the server instead of generating it on the client side and sending this generated HTML to a client. And because of that, your users don't need to wait for client-side execution to finish to see something. Also, the full HTML document is already there. So in case the JavaScript breaks, your users still can see the content. And this is a huge, huge win because the JavaScript breaks much more often than you think. The problem is it could take some time to generate it on the server side, to generate this page. And until that happens, your user sees nothing, a blank page. This is why you should cache those responses. So because the best code that is the fastest code is the code that is never written. So you should cache that and distribute through a CDN to make sure that users are receiving your website in a blink of an eye or a little bit longer. The fact that we are sending ready HTML to the front end also means that our single page application becomes SEO friendly out of the box, just like this. The website that user receives, though, is not a ready to use single page application. No, it's a plain static HTML. And if they click on something immediately after receiving it, probably nothing will happen. JavaScript code needs to be executed on the front end, on the website, and then the front-end framework takes control of this HTML document and makes the website interactive. This process is called hydration. And the problem with hydration is that it's eager, which means it's hydrating all the components that you have on the website, even though your user sees probably just few of them. So we execute a lot of code and we download a lot of code. That is not needed yet. It would be much better if we could embrace something called lazy hydration, which means that we are hydrating and downloading the JavaScript chunks of the code that is already seen by the user. And on some interaction like scroll, for example, we are downloading and executing other ones. Or sometimes none of them, because maybe it's just a static content and it doesn't have to be interactive. Another thing that could become a bottleneck is data. So if all you did was detaching your e-commerce frontend, it probably won't affect you. But if you are using multiple APIs from different origins, it makes sense to group them together behind a single API. And to make that happen, you should build or use already existing API gateway. An API gateway is basically just grouping different APIs into a single endpoint. So maybe not single endpoint, but single API. If you're using GraphQL, it's a single endpoint. If you're using REST, it's just a bunch of endpoints. And your frontend will call only a single API from this API gateway, and the gateway will take care of resolution of different requests that are needed for it. And decoupling your APIs not only gives you this luxury of just having a single API to call from the front end, which is great for front end developers and great for performance, but also makes you more decoupled and independent from your vendor. And honestly, to me, headless commerce is all about independence. At the same time, it's much, much easier to monitor your application because you essentially have just one API to watch. So we already know how to make our website fast, but there is one more thing that is essential for a perfect frontend. It's content. Or to be more precise, it's how it's being delivered to the frontend. So most of the headless CMSs these days is providing some kind of a visual building capabilities, which means that marketers can just log into a CMS and visually build your website. How it works. So originally, or before headless CMSs, it was very common that whenever you wanted to update our website, we're just creating an issue, asking developers to do this. They were doing what they were asked to. It was tested, then it was deployed, and maybe after 2 weeks, we had those changed. Now with headless CMSs, we're doing it a little bit differently. So the developers are still preparing the website, they're preparing the components, but then they're integrating this website with a headless CMS. So then the marketers can use this website, can use those components in a visual editor and compose full pages, change the content, add new content. And all of this is based on the REST API or GraphQL API. So it doesn't require any kind of new deployment. So basically, whenever you hit the save button, the update is ready. And the users already see this. So make sure to find a headless CMS provider that has those capabilities, because it will reduce the time and, in the end, money needed to make updates to your store significantly. So to summarize, to build the perfect frontend, you need a mobile-first design implementing a design system. You need to make your website fast by optimizing server-side execution, network transfer, and client-side execution, and focusing on instant first load. Thanks to the server-side rendering, even though we are using JavaScript, our website is crawlable, which means SEO friendly. Of course, you still need to optimize your SEO. Also, you need to integrate with headless CMS to allow your marketing team to make changes to your website using visual editor without help of developers and without deployments. Of course, each of those topics can be a separate presentation, but knowing those essentials, you know where to start. And that's the most important thing. So thanks so much for having me. Thanks so much for listening to this talk. And I hope you learned something useful. If you want to check out Vue Storefront, just visit our GitHub. And if you want your timeline to be full of web performance tips and some random thoughts about e-commerce, you can follow me on Twitter. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.